In the co-main event of UFC 273 in a bantamweight title rematch that everybody was waiting for. Aljamain Sterling, Funk Master, actually got it done. Most of the MMA world were definitely doubting this man, especially off the heels of that first fight between him and Petr Yan. But man, oh man, Aljo got it done via split decision, earning a 48-47 on two of the judges' scorecards, the other judge going 48-47 in favor of Yan. Omar, let me start with you this time. What was your impression of the scores, first and foremost, and then talk about your impressions of the fight?
Well, I can tell you that after the first round, my immediate reaction was, well, that shit's going to suck. And that's exactly what happened. Because I personally had Aljo winning the first round, but even at the end of the first round, I was like, I know people gave some of that to Petr Yan. Like, I know it. 100% I knew that that round was going to be split. Second and third, I thought were very, very straightforward. Some people even had the second round 10-8 for Aljo. And then, to me, 4 and 5 were pretty straightforward. The takedowns weren't working as well anymore. Petr Yan seemed to, kind of somebody like slapped his ass and kind of got him up and running again. And, he was able to take 4 and 5. When we were watching the fight and we were texting that night, the one thing we did notice was Petr Yan seemed to have too much on the line, risking it when it came to the judges, right? He wasn't doing enough to really put Aljo away. He seemed content to want to win the round as opposed to try to win the fight in a fight that is super close. The fact that Petr Yan is that upset about losing that fight is crazy to me. The fact that Dana White thought that was a robbery is crazy to me. That fight wasn't a robbery. That fight was based, at the end of the day, was based off of one round. One very close, very tossed up round. And the reason I gave it to Aljo was because Aljo did more work. I thought he had way more strikes landed in that fight. The big problem with that round and why I thought it was going to be split was he was doing all his work from the outside, straddling the cage, while Petr Yan basically had octagon control for the majority of that round, but did nothing with it. I don't even know how many strikes he threw in that round, but it couldn't have been that many.
Oh, I'll let you know.
Yeah, so once you see Mark's breakdown, you'll know that it could not have been Petr Yan. You can't win a round chasing a guy and getting tagged up. That doesn't make any sense. It just doesn't make any sense. So the first round for me had to be for Aljo.
Mark, take it away. I'll also put it out there now that having watched it, and I have not rewatched it yet, and I know that both of you guys have, but looking back on my impression watching that fight and watching that first round, I thought Yan won that first round. But having rewatched it, you're like, absolutely not. So please enlighten me.
First off, I feel like I may have a lot to say on this fight, so buckle up. I am so happy that Aljo walked out of that arena with the belt because he absolutely won that fight. I have seen a good 1 million people on Twitter crying robbery and saying he only won rounds 2 and 3 and blah, 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 blah. And I am here to educate these people. Forward pressure is not scored at all unless effective striking is dead even. It counts for nothing. 0-0. Aljamain Sterling won round 1. The UFC stats say that the strikes were 20-13 in favor of Aljo. And I don't even know where half of the Yan tally is even coming from because when I watch, which I've done like 4 times now, I get about 18-6 in favor of Aljo. So I don't know where these ghost strikes of Yan are coming from, but they're not shit that even landed. 18-6 by my count. And even if you try to tell me like, oh, but one of those shots from Yan was a big one. All right, make it 18-8, make it 18-10. It doesn't matter. He lost the round. It's not a debatable round, and Yan does not get points for walking forward. Moving right along. You certainly can't deny that Aljo won rounds 2 and 3. So already the scoring debate for this fight is over, and the right man is champion because it's 48-47 Aljo. But for the hell of it, I will take this even one step further and say that it was actually 48-46 Aljo because round 2 should have been a 10-8 round, which is how I scored it live and how I continue to score it after the rewatch. I'll tell you why. Any striking in that round even prior to the Aljo takedown, was dead even. Then from the takedown, we get mount, we get a full back take, and 3 minutes and 50 seconds of complete control. It's a 4-minute long shutout in a 5-minute round where Petr Yan does 0 things in those 4 minutes, and the other minute was dead even. Now, I get it, just control does not make a 10-8 round, and if it was only that, it's probably still a 10-9. But at 142 in this round, Aljo lands 4 straight strong shots going body head. He then attempts a rear naked choke with each arm. He rolls Yan to his stomach, postures up in full back mount, and rains down about 7 hammers that all land. Plus, he adds more shots across the final minute of the round. So you got a takedown, a couple mounts, a couple sub attempts, about 25 to 30 strikes, 7 or 8 of which are hammers, plus 4 minutes of control versus nothing. Nothing that Yan did the whole round. That's a 10-8 in my book. I don't see how it's not. So for me, that's a 48-46 fight. Even if you gave round 1 to Yan, that's a draw fight, and Sterling still goes home with his belt. Not to mention the round ends, and Jon Anik immediately acknowledges the dominance, saying, many will probably score that round at 10-8, and then he seems to forget about it as the fight goes on. So clearly he was conscious of it. So I think Aljo clearly won that fight. Honestly, this is the Aljo that I thought we'd see the first time these two guys fought. I picked him the first time, and I was really disappointed by how flat he looked. But this is the guy that he can be. His pacing was much better. Yeah. His length was helpful in keeping Yan off him, which is what I thought would be the case the first time. And like I said last week, he came in with a much more effective game plan to initiate his wrestling. In the first fight, he looked for a lot of like clinch type takedowns, and if you remember, he kept getting his legs swept over and over again. It was not the spot to be for him. This fight, he focused way more on getting low, grabbing a hold of a leg to elevate, and just simply driving forward all the way to the fence if need be before Jan's balance was effective. And it didn't always work. Jan's takedown D is great, but all he needed was a couple to change the fight because his control is that good once he gets on top of you. So it was a much better game plan for him for sure. I got to shout out Ray Longo. I loved that moment at the end of round 2 where Aljo had his arms out to the crowd and he's yelling at Aljo like, look at him, because he knew he was breaking him. That was an awesome moment. Of course, to Jan's credit, like I said he would, he comes back and wins round 4 and 5. The guy wins every 4 and 5 there ever was. But it wasn't enough. His reign at the top is done for now, and I'm really happy for Aljo. He was written off in a way that no one with his talent level ever deserves to be written off. He probably felt like, I've put in all this work all my life. I beat all these top guys. I've clearly proven I'm elite, and I'm getting treated like a scrub. I don't understand how this is happening to me. And to be able to find it in himself, to go out there, shut all those people up, I can't imagine how good that must have felt for him. And I hope he enjoys the hell out of this victory lap.
Yeah, man. He has racked up quite a few names on his record here, besides Yan, Corey Sandhagen, Pedro Munoz, Jimmy Rivera, Cody Stamen. The list goes on. Henan Morale. He beat Henan Morale.
The performances, too, are, I mean, these are not just like wins that he just happened to win. Like, the performances have been very good. Some of them even dominant. You know, some of them close, but some of them very dominant. I mean, the kid he's very good. And people gave him a lot of shit for the whole, you milked it thing, this, that, and the other. I didn't care about any of that because at the end of the day, that shit was all Jan's fault. It didn't really matter what, how Sterling reacted to it. You may not like it. The one thing I kept seeing online was, how does he have the integrity of a champion? Motherfucker, what are you talking about? He's getting pay-per-view points and he's got a belt. He's about to fight the same guy over again. He's not running from the guy. Let them fight. Let them figure it out. What do you want from this kid? And at the same time, he goes in there. He does exactly what he should have done. The fight was still very close, very competitive. 4 and 5 showed exactly what could potentially happen once Aljo runs out of steam, which he started to do. He started to look a little bit slower. The takedowns weren't working for him. He started to do those goddamn lazy clinch takedown things again, and he got put on the floor as a result, both rounds. And that's where all of a sudden the control started to go towards Yan, and Sterling wasn't looking like so much of a back expert at that point, right? Mm-hmm. Things can change very quickly in a fight, but the reality is Aljo did work, man. Aljo pushed through. He did a great amount of work from round 1 to 3. Like Mark said, some people, including Mark, got 2 rounds essentially out of the second round. So by the time they got to the third round, Aljo was basically up 4 rounds. So, I mean, I don't understand how people can hate on this kid at all. Prior to the Jan fight, there was no reason to hate him. You guys didn't like the way that he, had his little Oscar moment. I get that. That's fine. You're allowed. But you can't disrespect him as a fighter. The kid does work. And he's still, to this day, one of the best, and now, arguably, the best bantamweight in the UFC.
Yeah.
You nailed it in that he never ran from Jan for a second.
Never.
The whole time he was like, yeah, we're going to do it again. He had to have surgery, but that was not in his control. And the whole time he was like, when I'm healthy, I'm going to beat Petr Yan. And that's exactly what he did. And
it should. So that's actually, I'm glad you actually brought up the injury, because after the fight against Jan, the first time he talked about how he had, numbness in his neck, numbness in his arms, and all this kind of stuff. And he had been dealing with neck issues for the longest time. The dude got a replacement disc in his neck. So just for context, when DC had his back injury, and he needed to get surgery, he opted for a back fusion surgery of some kind. The difference, and Aljamain was the one who was actually talking about it, because Aljamain has also gotten a disc replacement surgery that was, I think, either the same or very similar to what Aljo got. And so he was talking about how the fusion procedure essentially allows more impact on people's spine. So they can take more impact, the jumping and all that other stuff, they can take more of it. What it does lack in is mobility. So you kind of have like this, if you've ever watched Batman Begins, like he can't like turn his neck, right? Like he's got to just kind of turn his whole shit around. He doesn't have the same mobility as you did when you had, the individual discs, as opposed to getting discs fused together. Aljo opted for more mobility than he did stability, I guess, in that sense. So he was more the Dark Knight, where he was able to like turn his head, has the disc in there specifically, but it is technically more fragile and doesn't take as much pressure as the other procedure. So he still had things to worry about, and even through that, looked the best I think he ever looked from a physicality standpoint and a cardio standpoint.
Yeah, man. Looked amazing.
And Jan was pushing the pace. That whole first round, he was on his back foot, but still tagging him, still moving. It is fucking exhausting to fight on your back foot. Exhausting.
He did it with a dozen times in that first round.
Yeah. To still come out in the second round and put on the clinic he put on in the second round, and then come out again in the third round and take his ass down again and do it again. He lost the fourth and fifth round. I don't think anybody disputes that, including him. But he did win the first 3 rounds. 100%.
Okay, let's talk about where these gentlemen go from here. Aljo being the champ, I feel like there are only a couple names that make sense. One of them was TJ Dillashaw, who he himself called out in his Octagon interview. Mark, let me throw it over to you. Is there anybody other than TJ that you would want to see? Maybe a Jan rematch or a different name?
God, no.
I don't need a Jan rematch right now. Definitely not. It does sound like he's going to fight TJ. Last I heard, TJ expects to be back around July, which obviously lines up pretty well with Aljo's timeline right now. The UFC had TJ there at cage side. Dana made some comments post-fight. Everything seems to be pointing to that. I think that's probably the plan. If he's not ready for any reason, I would love to see Aljo fight Jose Aldo. I think Aldo's earned that shot. I guess TJ is probably ahead of him in the rankings, so I have to admit that. Personally, I still really want to see TJ versus Aldo. That's what I was hoping would have been happening in the meantime, but obviously TJ was not ready, so that didn't happen. But I feel like it's got to be one of those two guys, and higher likelihood is going to be TJ.
Yeah. Omar, you have any takes on that?
Yeah, I love the TJ fight. Stylistically, that fight is super intriguing. There's also a little bit of the bad blood because Aljamain obviously took TJ needing steroids and all that stuff to heart. And I kind of get that too, right? I mean, TJ was blatant about it. I mean, it wasn't even like sneaky or anything. He was blatant about it. Yeah. With that in mind, I don't know if we mentioned it on the cast last week. We had talked about it definitely for sure on our own, but Aljamain may or may not have failed the sniff test when it came to, the 8-pack that boy was walking around with,
God,
and like
12-pack.
And the 12-pack on his sides too, bro. His side muscles are crazy. But we all had our tinfoil hats on, and we were like, he's taking some of that Vitor juice, some of that Ron juice. But it should be mentioned, ironically enough, that he just received, like the day before the fight, his Letterman's jacket indicating that he has 50 plus past drug tests with USADA. I think his official number, was 53 or 54, something like that. So I think that answered our question. So he didn't pass the smell test, but he did pass the test. So
absolutely,
it doesn't 100% answer the
shredded.
question, but I will assume that he is clean.
Yes,
Yeah,
agreed.
man.
Agreed.
I mean, not. It looks like he has 1% body fat, or is like 0%. It's
Dude,
unbelievable. Unbelievable.
The pictures were maddening. I mean, he didn't even look the same when he got on the scale. He looked normal on the scale. But
looked more
whatever he
normal,
was
yeah.
doing while he was training was
Agree.
fucking crazy.
Cutting or whatever. Okay, let's talk
baby.
about Petr Yan, because this man is not going anywhere, in my
No.
opinion.
No,
Similarly, having just lost the belt, well, technically he already lost the belt. Only a few names at the top of bantamweight right now. Omar, do you have any preference that you would want to see Yan go up against next?
see, it is interesting, right? Because he's already beaten Jose Aldo. I'm pretty sure he beat the hell out of
Breaks
Corey
off Jose.
Sandhagen.
Oh my god.
Yeah,
I thought he almost beat Aldo into retirement.
there's not a lot of, I don't know if there's a lot of people that I really consider even having the ability to beat him or really put up a competitive fight. Rob Font is number 5 right now. I don't necessarily see that being a real, stylistically, I don't see that really working out for Rob Font. Marab could be fun just because Marab is crazy and you never really know what could happen in a Marab fight. But you're basically just going further down the line, and I don't really know how well that's going to work out for Yan. We might be looking at a couple of rematches potentially, or we might be looking at Yan just waiting to see what comes out of a couple of different fights here and there, because I want to see Yan versus TJ Dillashaw, but who the hell knows when that's going to happen at this point. So maybe give him a Rob in the interim just because that fight is just fun. But the real fight I want to see is Yan versus Dillashaw. It's just not going to happen right now.
Mark?
There's one answer and one answer only, and I don't want to see anything else, and Omar hit it. Merab Dvalishvili. Continue the battle between the teams. Aljo would 100% be in Merab's corner. Merab is deserving of a huge fight like that. He's been waiting for an opportunity like that. What better way for Yan to try to climb back up to the top than by taking out one of Aljo's best friends, if he could do it? Perfect fight, perfect story. Book that.
And we would get to see Ray Longo say Petr Yan many more times.
If we're lucky, we'll punch a hole in his fucking chest.
Fucking look at him. Look at him.
That's got to be one of the greatest lines in a championship fight from a corner
Yes.
ever.
You mean to punch a hole in his chest?
Yes.
I want you to go out there and you punch a hole in his fucking chest.
That's what I want.
That's legendary.
Yeah,
legendary.
it really is.
Especially because he really knocks him out afterwards.
And then he knocks him out. Not in the chest, though. It would have been better
No.
if it was a knockout by chest punch.
That would have been great.
Oh, man.
Okay. I like Omar. I think my number one fight in this entire division right now would be Yan versus TJ.
I'd be down for that because it let my man Aldo get a title shot then. It's fine.
I mean, Aldo Sterling would also be an amazing and intriguing matchup.
Agreed. 100% agreed.
But I think stylistically, Yan Dillashaw would just be like, oh
Oh,
my
yeah,
God,
great.
Christmas Day, man. Oh my God.
Dude, so Aldo is legendary for his takedown defense. The man will give up a takedown by like round 5. Like we all know that. But to try to get this man down for the first 3 rounds of any fight is borderline impossible. And Sterling he's not outstriking Jose Aldo. It's not going to happen. You're not going to sell me on that.
Problematic matchup for Aldo.
It is a really problematic matchup. But could you
Aldo or
imagine if
Aljo? I'm
Aldo
sorry.
it's problematic for Aljo.
Okay.
If Aljo could actually do it, though, and take down and control Aldo on the ground, how fucking legendary would that be?
Yeah. Yeah.
I don't think anybody's ever done that before.
It's a cool fucking fight, man. That's why I'm pissed that TJ and it's right. TJ is ahead of Aldo right now. It's fair, but I wish he wasn't.
Yeah.
I just feel a little. I mean, I hear you also about Merab. It would be a very cool matchup with Jan. I feel a little weird going that far down the line for Jan though.
Far down the line, he's ranked like 5 or 6.
Oh, I'm saying
Merab is 6.
6. See, I mean, I feel weird going outside of like the top 5, but he's right
honestly.
there.
So did I though. I that was why I was saying.
I don't get that.
But the reality is the number to me doesn't matter so much as who the person is and what we have going on in the first 5. Like he's beaten everybody else.
He can't fight.
I know.
TJ, he can't
Right.
fight Aldo again. I mean, I hope not. That wouldn't make any sense.
He could fight Rob Font. He's number 5. He could.
Font's fighting Vera already.
Yeah.
Oh. Okay. Well, there you go. So it's kind of an inevitable. It's kind of like an eventuality. It has to be that way, I guess.
Yeah, I don't think that's a far fall at all.
I guess not. It would be an amazing shot for Merab.
Oh, huge shot from Merab.
Okay,
And
let's
he
go
could
on.
totally capitalize on. By the way, that's a very
yeah.
winnable fight for Merab.
It's an interesting fight too. Yeah, it is.
For sure. Let us move on. Anything that you guys really want to say about Petr Yan or Aljo?